You can roll out a dashboard to a whole team of people and have that same look and feel depending on what their role is. And then you can add your own bits just by dragging a widget, saying where you want to extract the data from, and it's live data straight from that point. So, as I say, you can put that in Jira, but most common for most people is to log into Confluence and get your live page running there. And then if you want to go and write your artifacts, look at the requirements, whatever else, all these things, again, these widgets with the data, 99% of them are click, and it will take you to the ticket itself. It will take you to the live instance of the data.
Okay. And one more question. We've been talking about development, which is where Agile comes in. But after the software is developed, when it's in production, it's important for us to have proper management of that software. And then there will be a stream of steady enhancements which might not require a new project team to be constituted, but can be handled by a small number of people who know the software. So how does Atlassian support that kind of a team? The team which will manage a stable production-ready in production software.
Yeah, I can start off with that. So that life cycle that I talked about, yeah, it's continuous. So after software is deployed, it's created and deployed, then it's never perfect. So as you said, then people, end users, will raise bugs, they'll raise feature requests, and then that is captured within Service Desk, and that becomes an issue, and that issue is returned to the start of the life cycle as being a actual feature request, which can then get pulled into Confluence, which can then get collaborated, which can get rated and then chosen by product managers to be given a particular order. And then if that's chosen, it can then be put into that agile methodology where it's a feature or it's a part of a sprint, which then is allocated points, and it goes through that whole flow from Service Desk to Confluence to Jira software and through that entire process.
Again, just to add to that, the Service Desk, what very important thing about Service Desk that some people make mistakes on is that you've got developers who have the ticket themselves that they're working on needs to have its own life cycle because it's a software ticket. If you have an external customer, or even if it's internal, but if you have a customer that's logging a problem, the workflow that the customer has generally is very different from the workflow that the ticket has to fix the bug. And also what's really important is that what you don't want sometimes is whatever the developer writes into the ticket, sometimes you can be a bit sensitive. You do not want your customer seeing the same fields. So what Service Desk correctly does is effectively, although it's one tool, it has that division. It has the capabilities saying when the customer logs a bug, it has this workflow. It automatically can spawn and create a new bug fix ticket for the developer who has a different workflow. And at certain points of the workflow, it could share certain fields up. Okay, not everything. What you don't want is a ticket created by a customer, worked on by the developer, and it's the same ticket where he types the same whatever he wants in there, and it then becomes visible by the customer. And that is why this is really good, because you've got one tool, but two ways of traveling through it, and you can share fields as necessary, as opposed to two separate tools which are completely not integrated. And then you have to have the ITIL Service Desk ticket somehow connected to your software development ticket, and then you've got to share the data, and that's why the beauty is one tool, two applications, servicing and change control for development.
Okay, another curiosity of mine. Now India is a country which has got a lot of software developers. People join the software career right, from campuses. Do any of these tools actually help in measuring the productivity of an individual software worker? Because their performance management and appraisals and promotions and all are based on that. So does this help or simplify, grading or assessing the performance of individual software workers in a team?
I'd say Agile methodology does that. So when you have tasks, there are allocated points, as I mentioned before, and then each developer will pick up tasks and complete them in a certain period of time and clear points. Now, it's not designed as a way of auditing people as such, but it's very much a way of encouraging and motivating people to work in that team environment. So if you're sitting next to someone and they're clearing a multitude of points and you're not doing very much, it has the positive effect why people are getting motivated to work in the right way. So we didn't invent Agile, but part of our success is, or a great deal of our success has been tied with such a dominant force in both software development, which has gone broader beyond software at the moment into other areas. So yeah, to do that, I would say the point system within Agile is very, very helpful.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, it's not about finger pointing individuals. It's about them realizing themselves sometimes, and that maybe they're not performing themselves within their team to the capability of everyone else. And you get that through visibility. Again, that comes right back to Paul's presentation, which is to have live data presented. And when you do a story, you when you're doing Agile, you write stories, and you then vote as a team as to how many story points. You don't tend to do it in man days. That's a bit more old-fashioned, but you write story points as a team. You're judging it as a team, and then you'll start working on those individual tasks. And then, of course, once it's assigned to somebody or to a small, maybe a group, it becomes very visible to everybody as to how well the individual or the team is doing. So it's not there to shame. It just inherently happens that people want to be better than the next person. That's kind of the nature of developers. Are funny breeds. That's kind of the nature of developers. Good developers just want to do good work, and they don't want to be encompassed by bad tooling. They really want to code. They really want to please. Sometimes they're a bit strange, but they just want to produce product, and that kind of visibility helps them, and good tooling helps them.
So is the issue of measurement of individual software workers' productivity, is that an important issue? May not be for you all, but for the teams?
More than that, it's the issue of knowing who's writing good code and who's writing code. That's more important than sheer productivity.
So on that point, of course, there are tools that can give you code quality, but the proper way, you don't necessarily find it out immediately, but you find it out over a period of time. When bugs are reported, and it's reported against a particular piece of code, again, you can start to get those metrics. So it's not immediately, apparently, that I might be writing bad code, but when a bug fix comes through and my code has to be touched, then you've got that capability of saying, Jerry's, it's always his code that's been touched.
My organization would really like to see that kind of interface and integration between tools like SonarQube and Atlassian, because we are missing that. We want to know who's writing good code, and we want to make sure only good code gets promoted, rather than middling of code.
Well, that, like we said at the very beginning, Atlassian doesn't provide.
No, I'm just saying integration between.
Yeah, that's if you like the job of our platform.
Right.
So that's where we have those capabilities to plug tools in and be able to get them continuously integrated along. That's exactly what we do very well.
In fact, the entire continuum of continuous test, continuous build, production, integration and release, that's really important, because that's the way our customers want the entire industry to move, whether it is for development of new software or whether the maintenance of existing software.
Yeah, and again, very importantly, part of that aspect, therefore, is code reviewing. So I don't know how many people in the audience might not know, but how much of your code is reviewed. But once again, code reviews is part of the Agile, doesn't have to be, but generally is a good practice within the Agile development to do code reviews. But again, if you think of the Jira workflow, to release a finished artifact such that it can be merged and integrated in, can be part of the control mechanism of Jira, connected to something like Bitbucket and thus Git. So in other words, it's a gate on the Jira workflow. When the code is correctly reviewed and signed off by, and again, you can control this, it will not be allowed to be integrated until 3 people have signed it off. Those can be the gates that you could put on a Jira ticket. When it's 3 people signed off and code reviewed it, it's allowed to be integrated. And it's not manual. The third person to say yes, it gets integrated straight away. No human needs to be involved. So that's how you start to get good code quality.
I would find for you to think about it in a long-term basis. Now this is something to do with your commercial decision as you can do. You have these universities, IITs, leading institutions, engineering colleges spread over the country. And there are some examples from industry, hardware and software, where they had tools which are proprietary. And for the education and the budding engineers who come out of it, these tools are deployed right at the engineering colleges. And the charges and the expenses are very different. So if you put them into universities, the next batch and the next batch of engineers who come out, they would start demanding from the industry. Oh, we would want to have Clearvision or Atlassian. This has been the practice by some people. You can name them. General Electric did it. Texas Instruments did it in India. And they are now bearing the fruit of it. So if you can start that kind of a vision in India, that you will select some 100 and 200 engineering colleges where your tools would be, they always go for open source, you know that. The teaching institutions don't want to spend huge money for each student. But if you can subsidize it, bring it down the cost to introduce in the universities and the colleges.
Atlassian have a very good story
3
here.
to 4 years later or 5 years later, these colleges and the students, they will demand that the industry must have these tools. So this is one way of really bringing the Gartner quadrant to India, which is at the moment not there actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree. Yeah, it's mindshare, and Atlassian is very, very cognizant of that. And so we have a very, very attractive education program. We've seen it in Silicon Valley. So basically of developer languages has been the most prevalent of that. So the latest batch of development, Ruby on Rails, those kinds of things have really driven Silicon Valley because people have come out of universities and done that. So basically Atlassian has a very, aggressive isn't the right word, but a very, very attractive way of putting our software tools within universities, as well as charities as well. We're also very involved with that. So giving back to the community, and we actually see education institutions as being part of that. So for us to provide our tools to either charities or universities, we do that in an extremely attractive manner. Do you want to?
Well, I was just going to say that one of the Atlassian numbers, so 54,000 companies are commercial. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. And if I get my numbers right, there's 362,000 companies which are, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Which are below 10 users or into the charitable area, which are just not counted in the 54,000. So it's 362,000. Right, it's a big number that they don't count as customers because they are below the 10 user or into the kind of charitable area. So those are big numbers. So I think that's pretty giving to the community as well.
What was the best learning, from one of the customer who has deployed and used these tools?
That's a good question. Best learning. I actually probably would come back to this gentleman's point. Actually, that is to try and get good quality code first time. That is the most valuable things that. So let me tell you a little bit of a short story. So my dad, he was an engineer, a construction engineer. And I took him to an event, this is going back quite a few years ago, and I took him to an IBM event. And that IBM event was saying, it was all about software, And it was all about saying, we write software and every release has thousands of bugs in it and all this, and you have to go back and re-engineer it. And my dad came out of the show saying, how can you use the word software engineering? It's an insult to the word engineering. I'm a traditional engineer. I manufacture things. You can't have quality that's poor. And I had I struggled to give him a real answer. I'm in the software industry, and here he is at his age telling me about engineering and the quality behind engineering, right? And we've got software engineering in the term. So I would come back to this gentleman's point, which is I think the most reassuring thing that we can do with these tools is to make sure the quality of the code goes out as best we can first time. And that is about having these gates again and being able to not leave it up to humans, but having some metrics and controls and gates that control that. I think that's probably the best thing I'm seeing.
How many managers really accept the overheads involved in using these tools?
Not enough. There's no tool that's going to do that. That's through education and people like yourself. There's a cost to quality. And when your teams are coming to you and saying, or other managers or putting influences, we've got to get this out the door. And sometimes I'm going to say people at your level put pressures down and say, we've got to get this product out. We promised this customer this by this date. You only have that triangle, cost, quality, time. And if you're not careful, they don't all fit together. So get into a good habit of quality control through code reviewing. And do you know what? It will save you money not that much further down the line. And sometimes don't put too much pressure on your development teams to rush something out the door. Where you can make that saving by improving on time is getting tools that give you better deliverables and are far more efficient, and are not clunky, and don't take up human time to get them working. Save that energy to put it into the quality area.
One thing that I've probably learned from looking at our customers at the time I've been at Atlassian is probably driving culture. The successful organizations that I've seen and what I've learned from them is that you drive a culture, and that comes through certain aspects which are important to your organization. So I've found organizations who are successful have a culture of accountability, and that can be driven through our tools. So when you create a ticket, you have a service level agreement to respond to that and things like that. But it's not all about the tools. So when you have an accountable culture, accountable to your peers through Agile, when you have a service level, a workflow where every step of it has to have an outcome, has to have a response. In my dealings with those kinds of customers, they've been successful organizations. So people who drive cultures and have the tools behind that to make sure that people are accountable every step of the way, to make sure that everyone's on board and moving in the same direction. That's what I've learned from the customers that I've dealt with so far.
Yeah, I have a question. We are using Bugzilla and GitHub for version and bug database. And we are using Atlassian in the Europe for bug tracking, for ticketing system. So is there a way in actually where we can integrate and make a common suite for all these three? Because we are using open source, that's a GitHub and Bugzilla in India here. And we have a partner in Europe, and they want us to use the Atlassian ticketing system. And actually it's becoming a little trouble for us to really follow up the tickets and do the version controlling. How easy it is to integrate this through the open source platforms without a learning curve for our developers?
So I'll have first go at that. So if I understood correctly, there's two organizations involved here. One's chosen Bugzilla and the other one's chosen Jira. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, it's a partner who is actually a marketing channel in Europe. They are using Atlassian ticketing system.
Yeah.
And we in India...
But it's Jira and with the service desk, or just the Jira aspect?
Yeah, it's a Jira.
Okay. So Jira and you say Bugzilla?
No, there's no Bugzilla. We use a Bugzilla and we use GitHub for our controlling, because we also have developers in US.
Okay.
so we do the version controlling through GitHub and Bugzilla for the bugs and whatever problems. And the troubleshooting comes from the clients, and that gets logged into Atlassian
Okay.
in Europe. So is there a way in where we can collaborate all the three and make it a common platform for us?
Okay, so if you can't harmonize on the tooling, which I will respect, you must have your reasons why you can't just use one Jira. Let's assume that you can't harmonize. There is a third-party product called ConnectAll, nothing to do with us, that its pure job is to connect different change control tools, which Bugzilla and Jira are. Effectively, they're doing the same job. That will help you transition data, but in terms of getting visibility of information to do reporting, you can do that again in something like Confluence, where you can point into the different tools to extract data. It wouldn't be my first choice because I think you're